Hey there, it's Rachel Mullins, the host of Hashtag No Filter Fridays on Public House Media.
Hey everyone, it's Selena. You're listening to Stories from Planet Earth, and I am here today with Krutheeka. Hello! Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Of course, thank you for having me. This is very exciting.
Yeah, I've been wanting to interview you since I first started this podcast, so I'm excited that we're finally getting around to it.
I've wanted to be on this podcast for a minute now, so the excitement is mutual.
Cool. So, you are actually my first ever guest that doesn't live in Colorado.
I'm glad to open up your reach beyond Colorado.
I know, I'm excited about that too. So we actually did meet here like way back in the day though, when we were both young, starry-eyed college students.
That is true. Starry-eyed might be an exaggeration, but we did meet young.
Yeah, I was quite starry-eyed.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, but we actually were roommates for a little bit.
You know, little old Elizabeth apartment.
Yeah, those were the days, man. I miss simpler times.
Yeah, I miss having you as a roommate.
I miss having you as a roommate.
It was like such a cute little house, you know?
Yeah, it was. It was. But I'm super glad that we became roommates, and it opened up just like such a beautiful friendship. You're one of my best friends.
Oh, you too. You too.
So it was just so serendipitous that we met and that we're still friends to this day. It makes me really happy.
Me too. Our friendship has stood the test of times and the test of distances.
Yes, and it will continue to do so.
Yeah.
So diving right in, what I usually ask in the beginning is where you're originally from.
So I was born and brought up in India. That's where I studied till grade 10. And then after that, my dad got a job in Saudi Arabia. So my entire family kind of relocated to Saudi. So I lived in Saudi with my mom, dad, and my brother for 2.5 years, which is where I did my high school, which is grade 11 and 12. And then the year after, my high school was kind of like between places. And then I moved to Colorado for university, which is where I spent 4 years of my life there. And then I went back to Saudi for an internship, and then went back to India for a little while. And then now, for the last 2 years or so, I've been in Toronto finishing up my master's. So been around a little.
Yes, you have globetrotted all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So just starting from the very, very beginning, what was it like growing up in India and then moving to Saudi?
Growing up in India was extremely boring. I feel like this is quite universal for most kids in India, but life in India when you're a child mostly revolves around family and school. There's very little else going on. So very normal, very, very, mellow. And then I moved to Saudi Arabia, which was so I went to a co-ed international school, which was very, very new to me because in India I studied in an all-girls convent. So that was wild. That transition was wild. But I think I adjusted pretty okay. It took me a year to kind of get the handle on things, but I made some really, really good friends, and sooner or later, just figured things out a little bit.
So why did you decide CSU was the school for you?
Honestly, there was very little decision to be made. So what happened was I applied to the program at CSU, and it was kind of a general program. So it was called engineering science, because I knew I wanted to do engineering. I just didn't know what type of engineering I wanted to do. And CSU kind of offered this program that was much more, much more diverse in the training that they offered. So that was primarily reason number one. And reason number two was just that I was dead set on really just not going back to India. So having gotten into this program, it kind of made things a little bit easier to make that decision.
Right. And so as far as coming to CSU, you moved from Saudi to Colorado, right?
More or less, yeah. I was kind of, I think I was in that, at that point, I was in India for 6 months at that point.
Okay. So did you experience any culture shock whenever you got to Colorado?
Oh my gosh, so much.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh wow, it was wild. It was wild. I thought people were a lot more, I don't want to say friendlier, because none of them were friends, but they were able to talk to each other like they were friends, because we all started university at the same time. It's just they were a lot more socially developed than I think I was. So that was weird for me to kind of adjust into. And I think I missed a few like social quips kind of things. I just didn't know a lot about, I don't know, the local colloquialisms that I just was missing, I guess. I'm not sure. So that was really weird. And I don't know, underbutt was a huge thing. I was just shocked that people walked around showing underbutt. And I was like, what? This is like, you're just out and about in your day and there's underbutt. I was like, what? That's crazy. So that was wild to me. The entire experience it took a while for me to get used to. Yeah.
And how do you think that you ultimately adjusted in the end of the day? Do you think that you ever fully got used to all of that? Like now, today, living in Toronto, do you feel like anything shocks you anymore, or are you pretty adjusted?
I would say I'm pretty adjusted. I think in the beginning, the reason I was struggling so much is because I kind of, to a large degree, I tried to erase all of my own personality to be able to adjust to people and to adjust to the surroundings that I was placed in. But I think now kind of accepting the surroundings and accepting people around me just the way they are without me losing my own footing is ultimately helped me. So I think instead of adjusting to other people and other places, I think I got more comfortable with my own skin. That helps me inevitably adjust to any situation or any place that I end up in, I think.
That's awesome. So what was your favorite part about living in Colorado?
So I think I got the most out of Colorado in my last 2 years of college. Last 2.5 years, I think. So I would say that you were a huge part of it.
Oh,
for sure. No, I swear. Like, I mean, I live with people right now that I'm not friends with, and I can value what it's like to live with somebody you love and who's one of your best friends, right? So I think that's huge. I also think being in nature. I remember the summer right before our final year, which I maintain was the best summer of my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we would be able to, whenever we just felt on a whim, we'd go to Horsetooth and swim in the lake, and like, I don't know, every Thursday night we'd end up at Road, every Tuesday night we'd end up at Bar, and like, things like that. I think having that solid community and having that those people that I made that connection with in Colorado was extremely beautiful. And I think also being in nature with like having the beautiful landscape that is Colorado was also very, very amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't trade that time for anything. It was just the purest, most unadulterated fun and happiness I feel like I've had in my life.
I completely agree. That summer was just something else.
Yeah. Memories I will definitely cherish forever. And it makes me just so excited for the day that you get to come back and we can, relive our Colorado days together.
I agree. We have such grand plans of travel and hanging out once we both have big girl jobs again.
Yes. And once we can move about the world in a normal way.
That too.
Yeah, but I did want to mention just how awesome I think it is that you took the step to just be so brave and start a completely new life in a new country. I think that sometimes you might not realize how amazingly awesome that is, but it's just so impressive to me.
I think about it too, but I think a large part of it was scary, and the reason I made those moves in the first place is because I didn't quite comprehend how actually insane and crazy that was. But I think also having the kind of parents that I did and having them kind of set me up to a certain level of success and certain level of freedom really, really is what pushed me to actually be able to experience this. So I think I derived a lot of strength, at least in my beginning days, from them. So I think that really helped.
Yeah, totally. But you did that still. On your own, you did it. And I'm just in constant awe of that because I've never left Colorado, essentially.
I mean, you traveled all the way here alone to come and see me and hang out with me, even though at that point, yeah, you hadn't left Colorado on your own until that point.
I think that was my first big solo trip. I did have a trip to Texas. Puerto Rico was after. But right. I had a trip to Texas to visit a college before high school. Mm-hmm. Ultimately did not end up going there. But yeah, Toronto was definitely my first big solo trip.
Mm.
Yeah, and that kind of lends well to my next question. What is it like living in Toronto?
It's very different from Colorado, I think. It's really interesting because I live in the heart of the city, but there are segments of the city that feel very different from each other. So just 15-20 minute walk from where I live, I will be in the middle of the concrete jungle with buildings that have 200 stories, for example. And then the current area that I live is super, super suburban. Each house is 50 years old, and they're these tiny little townhouse kind of places. And then another 10 minutes in a different direction, I'll end up at a university campus that's 200 years old. So it's very, very diverse, and the architecture is just phenomenal. I absolutely love Toronto architecture. I think it's something very marvelous. The weather is extremely unforgiving.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. The weather is quite unfortunate and unforgiving. But I think overall it's not a bad place to live. It's extremely expensive, but people are, to a large degree, given how big of a city this is and how generally city people are not very nice people, I find Toronto City is they're quite lovely. They're quite lovely.
Yeah, I didn't spend as much time as I would have liked whenever I visited you there, but it was so different than I thought it would be like. Definitely, it was just so much more industrial than I thought it would be. I guess, I don't know if industrial is the right word, but it was just so massive. And it's the biggest city I think I've ever been to.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but it was so much fun. I loved spending time there. I can't wait till I can come visit you again.
Yes, me too. I can't wait.
Yeah, in that weather, yeah. Next time I visit you, it will be the summertime, because last time I visited in the winter, and I was not prepared.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, you'd think, like, living in Colorado I would be, but it's just a different kind of cold.
It, like, bites you in the bones. It just pierces your flesh and just gets to the bone.
I've never felt so cold in my life. Like, honestly, just, like, walking to and from places that whole time, I was... Yeah, but it's still, hands down, like, one of my favorite travel experiences that I've had.
I agree. It was my first Christmas away from home, and it was my first New Year's away from home, too. Like, usually I at least had one of my parents around, but this was the first time I had, like, 0 people around, so I'm extremely glad I got to spend it with you guys.
Yeah, me too. And hopefully very, very soon we'll get to do that again in some capacity.
Yeah. Round
2. So, out of all of the places you've lived and visited, what do you think your very favorite place has been?
I would say, I think it would be Colorado, to be honest.
You think so?
I think so. I think the lifestyle, I just really love the idea of coming back home after a long day of work and just being able to sit in your backyard staring at the Rockies or staring at Horsetooth Lake, or, you know, just Saturday morning we decide we're going to start the day by, like, going on a hike and things like that. That lifestyle just really, really appeals to me, and it's just something that I've never done before Colorado, and it's something I really want to do because of that experience that I had in Colorado. So I think in that aspect, like, aesthetics wise, I think Colorado was probably the best place I've lived in.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I have not left this state, because it's just like, I landed in such a beautiful place. It's hard to, once you're here, it's kind of hard to leave.
I completely agree. If I get the opportunity to come back to Colorado, you know I'm coming back.
My God, I would love that. Please move back to Colorado. So, you have recently finished your master's degree.
I have.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, that is amazing. So you, throughout your studies, like you mentioned, you were an engineering student.
Yes.
What is that like? Because I'm all the way on the opposite end of the spectrum. I studied journalism and communication, so that was 2 worlds apart in my eyes.
Yes, I would say I would agree. They are extremely different. For example, I'm not the best at communication, so.
But you could do math, I'm sure, way faster than I can.
Yes, you are correct. I can do calculus probably relatively easier, maybe? I'm not sure. That's the wrong adjective. See what I mean about communication?
Yeah, fair enough.
I think everyone has their own experience of what it's like to be an engineering student. For me, it was mostly just stressful. At least in my undergrad, I think I was just stressed a lot of the times because there's just so much homework that you have to get done. And the first 2 years of being an engineering student is just, you have a lot of weed out classes where they make the classes purposefully tough. So to, like, you know, kind of shuffle through the students who are stronger and who are going to make it throughout the program. So the first few years of engineering school are very tough, I think. And then I think towards the end, you kind of understand how you kind of get the ropes of it. At least it took me 2 years to, like, kind of start getting the ropes of things. And, like, that's how I started getting settled into school and into the program and everything else. But I think I really love the fact that I made this decision. I think apart from the actual skills that engineering school teaches you, I think it also teaches you a range of soft skills on how to work under pressure, how to learn. I think that's a very, very important skill that everyone needs to have as to like just how do you pick up a new concept? How do you pick up something that you're not familiar with? It teaches you about work ethic. It teaches you about balancing. It teaches you about being ingenuity, thinking outside the box. So I think apart from the basic classroom content that you get out, there's a lot more that engineering school teaches you that is not readily, readily visible, I guess, to people from the outside.
Yeah, those are all really, really great points, because I feel like from the outside looking in, it seems like a lot of numbers, but it's good to know that there's a lot more to that education than just calculus.
I would agree.
Yeah, but I also quite admire you going after such an ambitious degree.
I don't know. I feel like just getting the degree is not really anything unless you're able to apply it. For example, I have 2 degrees in engineering, and it does not make me an engineer. It makes me a person who kind of can understand some things that maybe other people can't, but it by no means makes me an engineer, I don't think. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I know what you mean. It's kind of, you have a few more steps to go before you're like technically classified as an engineer.
Yeah, and getting an education, getting the knowledge from a book, I find is just a very, very small portion of your journey of being whatever you're wanting to be. The times that I've learned the most are, for example, projects that I've taken because I've been passionate about them, or like I'm genuinely interested in them. But like just having that degree, just having that education, I find is it's almost as good as, it doesn't mean anything, in my opinion.
Well, I think that you're kind of modest in that you're playing down that you did get 2 degrees in engineering. That is impressive on its own. But I understand what you mean. It's like you have more to do, like actually applying it to something in the real world, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you're like one of the smartest people I know.
You're always gassing me up.
It's what I do. So what do you think your dream job would be?
I definitely want to do something in engineering. I'm extremely passionate about building something. So right now, my master's degree was around machine learning. So I want to understand the real world applications of machine learning. So I think right now, all applications or industrial applications of machine learning have been kind of limited, or they've been under R&D trial and error kind of basis. So I would be passionate and interested to see how they could be implemented in large scale to, derive business goals or derive profits, or just essentially see how they can be applied to large scale operations. I think that would be very, very interesting to know. Another thing that I want to do eventually, which probably won't happen for a few decades, or at least it won't happen for a few decades to a degree that would actually be able to derive any real impact to anybody, because I think I'm lacking experience and I need to get experience first. But eventually the goal is for me to be able to return back to the community and give back. So I'm very, very passionate about education. So I would want to go back and be able to educate or help educate people who are not as fortunate as I was, because I was extremely supported by my community and my parents. So I would want to go back and support and help educate people who are maybe not as supported as I was, with skills that I've learned throughout my time, whether it be mathematics or engineering or programming,
Yeah, that's really amazing. I totally think that that's something up your wheelhouse, and I'm sure that'll happen one day.
I hope so too.
Yeah, but we definitely are in the same boat, job hunting and such. Because you're completely done with school, right?
I just have to wait for my grades to show up. So that would be like the indicator that I'm done.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we're kind of both in this like quarantine limbo right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you're keeping busy because I am over here the biggest quarantine stereotype. I've like cut my bangs. I'm like doing all kinds of puzzles, and I baked banana bread. So I'm a walking stereotype. What are you up to?
Wait, before I answer that question, are we talking banana breads with chocolate chips or without chocolate chips?
Oh, without chocolate chips. Unfortunately, I did not have any. And I would put nuts in it, but my little brother does not like nuts. So, plain old banana bread.
All right, fair enough. But next time, you should try to get some chocolate with banana bread, because I just, over the last 2 months, discovered banana bread with chocolate chips, and turns out it's the bomb.
I'll check it out.
Yes. Okay, so to answer your question, how am I keeping busy? To be honest, it's not been too difficult. I think I just do random tasks throughout the day that maybe are not the most productive, but I just do them, and somehow my day just goes by. So it's a little bit alarming how quickly I'm going through my days without getting anything productive achieved. For example, today I woke up, I worked on this like coding thing for like an hour or two in the morning, spoke to my parents for like 2 hours, spoke to my friend Maral for 2 hours, took a shower, and then made food, and just somehow it was like 5:30, and I'm like, how did this happen? How did we get here?
I can totally relate. The days are slipping by. I never know what day it is anymore.
I swear. And there are people who are just like, oh, this day's going by so slowly, and I'm like, I can't relate.
It's kind of half and half. Like, some days go by really slowly, I feel, and other days it's like, oh my god, it's like 2 o'clock already. What have I done? Nothing.
I feel you. I am one of those people that I want something productive to come out of this time. Like, I'm gonna push myself to get something productive come out of this time, because for the kind of job that I want to do, I am lacking a few skills that I want to maybe fill up. So I think this might be my perfect opportunity to fill up those little gaps, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've been kind of giving myself little tasks here and there too. But I'm also trying to remind myself that I don't have to be, like, not every moment of every day has to be productive, I guess, and to be a little forgiving with myself if, some stuff slips through the cracks.
You know what? That you are correct. You are correct. You are not wrong. And you're right. You're completely right. That is very important to remember as well.
Yeah, it's a balance.
It is. I agree.
So how many languages do you speak?
Oh my. This is such a debate, because I thought I speak quite a few, and then my boyfriend and my mom were like, maybe not.
Really? Why's that?
So I just mispronounced the word for onion in Hindi's. Okay. I'll give you the backstory. So I'm extremely fluent in English. English is my first language, and it is the only language I can read and write and speak in. Mm-hmm. And in school we are taught Hindi, which is a national language, and Kannada, which is a state language. And then my mother tongue is Tamil, which I'm fluent in speaking. And my father's side of the family speaks Telugu, which is a different regional language, which I can completely understand, but I can't really speak. Mm-hmm. So technically, and I took French for 2 years, but I'm not going to count French because that's just embarrassing, because I butcher French. I really butcher French. So technically, I thought I can fluently communicate in 3 languages, and I can survive in 1. So I can fluently communicate in English, Tamil, and Hindi, and I could, like, if I was dropped in the middle of nowhere, I could get out of it by speaking Kannada. So I thought this was the case, right? And then I mispronounced the word for onion in Hindi, and my boyfriend, who speaks Hindi, just relentlessly teased me for it, and like is just convinced that I'm lying about being able to speak Hindi. And then I asked my mom about it, and my mom was also like, yeah, maybe you're not fluent.
I think it might be something about being multilingual, though, because my mom, her first language was Spanish, and now she speaks both Spanish and English fluently. Yeah. But she's just really awful at, like, phrases.
Yeah.
Just little phrases she kind of mixes up sometimes. And even though I'm not completely fluent in Spanish, I think since she, like, messes up those phrases, I also mess them up. So it's kind of like, I think just having, like, more than one language bobbling around in your head kind of jumbles things up.
Maybe. You know what? I like your explanation a lot better than both of theirs. So I'm going to go with yours.
So, like, one example is that I've messed up is, you really shot the gun, but it's, you jumped the gun. So just little things like that, you know?
Oh, yeah. You know, when you said you really shot the gun, I was like, that sounds kind of right, but, like, something feels off. I just couldn't tell what it was.
Yeah, so I think that you probably are fluent, but your brain is just processing a lot of different translations all at once.
Yeah. I honestly think if I was dropped in the middle of, like, a Hindi-speaking neighborhood, I would be able to communicate and get out of there just fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no authority to say so, but I agree.
This is why we're friends. Yes. You just gassed me up.
So before I let you go, could you say stories from planet Earth in your chosen language?
Okay, I'll I don't think I can get, like, an exact translation, but I'll say it in Tamil. Kadaigal பூமியிலிருந்து.
Awesome. I'll take it.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, thank you so much for hopping on the pod with me.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Stories from Planet Earth. If you have some time, leave us a review, and be sure to subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. Find us on Instagram at SFPE Podcast. I'll talk to you next week.